Hi everyone, and welcome back to the PCM Integrations How-To series. In this video, I'm going to be showing you an overview of our design editor that will allow you to design your very own postcards right from our portal. For starters, you'll see this blank canvas right in the center of your screen. That's where you'll design your postcard. The first piece of information you'll need to know is what these two rectangular lines are that surround this postcard. The first, the blue one, is the bleed line. When you're designing shapes for your postcard, they need to extend all the way to that blue bleed line. The reason why is because when we're printing and cutting these cards, the color needs to wrap around the postcard. Extending them a little bit will ensure that this happens seamlessly. Second is the green dotted line, which is called the safe area. When designing your postcard, all text needs to be within the safe area. This is for similar reasons, and it ensures that the text will be clear when we print and cut your cards. We are currently looking at the front of the postcard design. On the right-hand side, you'll see this toggle between front and back. To complete your design, you'll need to toggle between the front and the back of the card and make sure to design both sides. Now that we have a general overview of the design editor, we can look into some of the tools for designing your postcard. On the left-hand side, you'll see a number of selectable tools, including Select, Images, Shapes, Text, Pen, and Layers. I'm going to get to all of these with you, but for now, we're going to start with Images. So I'm going to design a postcard for you, and that means that I need an image for the background of the front of my postcard. So after clicking Images, you can see I can either drop the image here or click here to upload. So I'm going to upload this image here that is the background of the front of my postcard. You'll see that this image pops in quite large, bigger than my postcard. So I'm going to resize it by clicking and dragging on the corners and the sides until it fits right into the frame. Remember, with the bleed line, I'm going to align it to that outer line outside the boundaries of the postcard to make sure that the bleed is accounted for. So here it is. Now before I go ahead and get this specifically in place, I want to point out that two things have happened now that I have this image selected in the design editor. One is on the left-hand side, there is this properties panel. Now we'll be using this panel a lot more, but this is where you can edit all the properties of the image, from its dimensions, from its height and width, to its opacity. Now the second thing is, on the right there's a panel that says Layers that now has an object called Background Front. That is this image. And I'll explain more about layers, but I just wanted you to make sure to take note of that. So in my design, this background image takes up about 70% of the frame of the postcard. So now that I have it aligned along the bleed line, I'm going to drag it up to reveal that section. And with a few other tweaks, I'll get this right in exactly the spot that I want it. All right, so next up, I'm going to fill in that bottom space with a rectangular shape that can kind of serve as a backdrop for the bottom of the card. Now to do that, I have to click on another tool on the left called Shapes. And once I click on Shapes, I'll see the different variations of shapes that are available. See square, circle, rectangle. I want a rectangle, so I'm going to click on it and drag it down to the bottom. Once it's there, I'll align it to that empty space, as you can see, dragging, making sure it goes over the bleed. There we go. So now that this is in place, I need to discuss layers with you. So as you can see, that shape has popped in on the Layers panel on the top, which means that it sits on top of the background image. You can even think of it as putting pieces of paper on top of one another. So in this case, I want that shape to sit behind the background image so that it only peeks out where the background image isn't, which means that I need to put the background image on top of it. So when I drag it on top, it pops into place, and now everything is as I want it. But really, I want that rectangle to be white. So to change that, I have to click on the rectangle, and then on the top left, you'll see this paint icon. Click on that, and then you can use this color finder or just click on the pre-selected colors, white, and that changes that shape to white. Now next I want to make a custom shape for that bottom section. To do that, I'm going to need to use what is called the pen tool. So you can see on the left there is the icon that reads pen, and I'm going to go click on that. And once I do that, you'll see that my cursor is now the shape of a pen. So how the pen tool works is you actually click to trace the borders of the shape that you want. So I can go here on the right and click and drag this edge down to here outside the bleed line, and then drag this edge all the way, keeping it straight, and then click. And then I'll drag this diagonal shape here. And this is where things can get a little interesting. With the pen tool, you can click and hold and make a curved line. So I'm going to make this shape have a curved edge here. So I clicked and held and then released. Now I'm going to take this line to the corner, click, and that will complete the shape. And similarly with the layers, I want to make sure this is below the background image so it nestles right in that bottom section and doesn't overlap the image. And then I'm going to change the color. But now when I change this color, I'm going to click on this little icon right here, which will allow me to grab color from the image. And so I want to make this shape the same color as the flowers. So I'm going to click on the flowers, and there you go. Now the color has automatically changed to the same color as the flowers so that it matches. So I'm just going to adjust a few things, make this a little longer, drag it over so it takes up a bit more of the frame. There we go. That's where I like it. So my idea for this design was to put the company logo in the bottom left section, that white section. So to do that, I'm going to go to Images, and I have this little nifty logo pre-upload template that I'll just drag in. Obviously drags in way too big, so I'll have to resize it by moving it around like this, clicking on the edges, putting it in place, dragging it around, make sure it fits right there. There you go, just like that. All right. So now that we've worked with images, shapes, and the pen tool, we're going to start working with text. So on the left, you'll see the text icon, and this is the text editor. We'll click on that. There are a few different options, but I'm going to click on Add a Heading for this postcard, which creates our text object here on the top left, which you probably can barely see because it has the same color as the shape on the bottom right. But I'm going to edit it and write decorative flowers, which is what this postcard is advertising. And then once that's completed, I'm going to go up to the top left and click on this A icon, which is how we'll change the text color to white. All right, now that I've done that, we can click back on it, and I'm going to adjust the font here, which pops open this font selector. I'm going to click Open Sans. That's the font I want. And then I'm going to click here on Normal. This will adjust the text type. I'm going to make it semi-bold. And then I get to adjust the size, so the text size, and I'm going to type in 200. This is a big heading. And you can see how that adjusts the text. I'm going to center justify it by clicking here. Then I'm going to drag it over to where I want it on the right-hand side. From here, I'm going to make one last adjustment, which is here on the left. On the properties, I'm going to change the line height back to around 1 so that it's a bit more contracted of a heading. And as you can see, it looks good. So now I'm going to move to create the subheading, which to do that, I'll go and scroll down to the left again, click on text, and I'll click add a subheading, which will pop in this text box once again. And so my subheading is going to read of the highest quality. And so I'm typing that out. I'm going to adjust the font again to Open Sans. I'll leave it at normal, and then I'll adjust the sides to make it the correct size for the subheading. Play with it a little bit. 100 looks pretty good. Drag that over, and then scroll back up to the A in the top left to change the color to white. Click on white. Then I'll adjust the size so that it fits nicely there. Center justify it. There we go. And that's our subheading. We just have to make sure it's in the right spot. Make it a little smaller. All right. So next I want to create our offer. So that's going to go in the bottom right. And to do that, I'm going to click on the decorative flowers text, copy it, Control C, paste it, Control V, and drag it down. So that's an easy way to move text around or add a text box. Should it be pretty close to what you're looking for. So let me write this down. Claim your free samples today. Adjust the size so you can see it all. Drag it in place. Looks pretty good. Now you'll notice after adding those 3 text boxes that they've all nestled in at the very top of the layers on the right-hand side. And that's because, well, by nature, if you want your text to be viewed, it has to sit on top of the background images or shapes or whatever. So the texts, generally speaking, should be near to the top of your layers. So for this next part, I'm going to create our little call to action. And to do this, I'm going to do a kind of technique where you can bring an image in and adjust the image background to be the background of a shape or a section of your postcard. This will highlight some of the functionality in the design editor that's a bit more advanced than just your average basics. All right, so to do this, I'm going to scroll over to the left and click on Images once again. Click here to upload this brick background image. Click Open. You'll see that pops in. It doesn't really fit on the postcard, but if I scroll here to the left under the Properties panel and click on Image Frame, I can click on this circular shape, and then that starts to constrain the image in a way that I want it to. So then I'm going to adjust the height just to make it a little smaller. You can see here, just playing with it to figure out what's the best option. There we go. And so that's getting closer to this kind of oval shape that I want, but it still shows the bike, so it's not really great as a background at the moment. But once I adjust it to get the size right so it fits into that spot, I can show you how to change the image frame's starting point. There we go. So that's about how I want it. And so then I'm going to scroll to the left, click on Image Frame once again. And then under this XY dimensions, I'm going to change the Y dimension to 1. And you can see that change the starting point from the frame of this image. And so now this background brick wall is actually the background of this circular shape. You can also see that on the right side and under the layers, this image background is at the top of the layers, but importantly that just means that it's above the background image, which is what is necessary for it to show up as sitting on top of that flowers image. So the next set of features I want to highlight here is actually to add a border to this circular shape. To do that, I'm going to have to scroll again to the left here under Border Settings. I click on Border Settings. I want this border to be white, so I have to go to the color and click on that. And in the color finder, click white. And then I adjust the width of the border, and I just keep pressing the plus button until it's at the width of my choosing. So as you can see, it's growing. I think 15 probably looks good. And there we are. Now this shape has a border. Adjust it a little bit, and it looks pretty good. So the last thing I have to do on the front of this card is just copy this subheading for this call to action, maybe adjust it to semi-bold so that it pops, and then just write call the phone number. You can see that looks pretty good. All right, so that's the front of the card now done. Next, I'm going to scroll to the back of the card. The most important thing you need to know about the back of the card is that there is an address block. This is where the recipient's address goes, as well as the postage and perhaps also the return address. And when you're designing the back of a postcard, you can't design anything in that section of the address block. The address block will always be the top layer. So you have to design around it and design with it in mind. And so for the back of this card, I'm going to do similar to the front. I'm going to click on an image and I'm going to drag in this background image for the back. And I'll click open. Now this is also loaded in too big, so I just have to resize it down to the size that I want for the back of the card. It's not as big as the other one. There we go. So I'm going to align it to the bleed lines, and there you go. So there's that background image, and you notice the address block sits on top of it because it is always the top layer on the back of the card. And now I can put together the rest of this card. So I'm going to use a shape here, a square. I'm going to drag it now to the size that I want, which is roughly half of the postcard. So there we go. Make sure it covers the bleed line. Just about there. Then I want to match its color to the leaves on that image. So I'm going to click on this color finder icon again. Scroll over the leaves and find the color that I want. And there we go. So now this square has exactly the same color as the leaves, but I want it to be slightly transparent so that we can still see that background image. So if I toggle this little slider here, that adjusts the transparency of the shape. And as you can see, I now can see through this shape to the background image. And I'll just adjust it here so it's perfectly in place. There we go. So before we add the text for this back of the card, I'm going to grab the logo image from the images selector here. There we go. We'll grab this logo. Have to resize it again. And that's just about right. So before we wrap this up now, I have to add the text. So I'll click text, add heading. You know the drill here. I'll type in my heading text. Once that's typed in, I'll adjust the font, Open Sans, make it semi-bold, adjust the size, 200. There we go. The color here on the left, I'll make it white again. Then we can drag it in place. Looks pretty good to me. And then what I'll do is I will copy it and then adjust the size and the text type for our subheading. So I'll type our subheading in right here. Then I'll just have to adjust this text box to make sure that it's all aligned. Center justified. Put it in place. Center justify that text so it's matching. And there we go. That's the back of our postcard. So now we've designed the front and back. I hope you've gotten a sense of how the design editor works, the different features of shapes and images and text, and the properties and the layers. And there's our front and back, and all you have to do is save it here, and then we're good to go. Thanks so much for watching this design editor how-to video. Hope you learned a lot, and look out for more content on our YouTube channel, PCM Integrations. Have a good one.